Hello, my friends. It's Nick. It's the ASMR nerd. And today we're going to talk about video games. I know, unprecedented, but that's what we're going to do. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Game Awards 2025. It is, of course, that time of year. We are here in mid-December, and we got a whole bevy of exciting announcements and reveals from the Game Awards. Now, the Game Awards is, of course, very exciting and interesting because of the awards themselves. You know, we always love to see what games and individuals are getting recognized for their contributions to gaming and for their excellence in their various fields. But I might go so far as to say that it is, in fact, the announcements, the reveals, that are the biggest draw for most people at the Game Awards these days. I think that's a reasonable assumption because we've got some very high-profile ones. And normally, I would do a top 10 most, exciting reveals for the Summer Games Fest season back in June. I've done that in years past. I never got around to it this year for various reasons, but I wanted to make up for it by running down my top 10 most hype announcements from the Game Awards this year. And in some ways, I would almost say that the Game Awards is becoming a bigger event for high-profile announcements of games. Certainly by volume, we get more in early June around Summer Games Fest, that time that used to be E3 once upon a time. We get a lot of announcements then, but in terms of like the profile of the announcements and how hype they are, it's hard to argue that the Game Awards is not, the premier event for those these days. So I'm going to be walking down my top 10 announcements and new game reveals from the Game Awards 2025. And it's kind of fun, actually, having two major times of year now where we, as gamers, get these big reveals and announcements. We have the traditional summertime slot, and now we have the December Game Awards slot, and it kind of feels like Christmas gets to come early for us a little bit, with all this exciting news. Speaking of Christmas, it's coming up pretty quick, really quick, in fact. It's possible that you don't have all your Christmas shopping done yet. Maybe you've got some folks in your life that need something, but you haven't been quite sure what, and it's getting down to the wire now. Well, my friends, do I have the answer for you? In fact, this video's sponsor, Into the AM, has the answer for you. Into the AM needs a little introduction on this channel. You've probably heard me talk about them a bunch of times. You've probably seen me wear their beautiful, elevated, everyday apparel a bunch of times. In fact, I guarantee you, if you've watched a video on this channel where I was on camera, you've almost certainly seen me wearing something from Into the AM. Their clothes are fantastic because they are not only super stylish, super comfortable, and easy to care for, but they are also a super practical and affordable gift for those people in your life that maybe need that extra special something this holiday season and you haven't quite figured it out yet. If you click on the link down below at the top of the video description, you will be able to browse Into the AM's extensive collection. It includes outerwear items like this very stylish shirt jacket, Sierra shirt jacket. It includes pants like their very comfortable sweats, which I'm wearing down below right now. It includes their very famous graphic tees like this beautiful one that I'm wearing right here, and all kinds of other stuff. It's jackets, whether it's long sleeve shirts, Henleys, whether you want the graphics or whether you want them plain, they've got you and your giftees absolutely covered this holiday season. Some fantastic discounts to be had as well, and they're getting new stock in all the time. I guarantee you will be able to find something there that suits that person that you are shopping for, that you need to get that last minute gift for, or for yourself. Maybe it's time to refresh your wardrobe and treat yourself this holiday season. Check out what Into the AM has for you. Once again, the link is down below at the top of the video description, and using that link, you will save 10% off your entire order at Into the AM, and that discount stacks with all the other discounts that they have going on, all their other sales. So it's a fantastic way to save. It's a fantastic way to get an awesome gift for that someone or someones that you are doing that last minute shopping for, or to get some for yourself so you can look your best this holiday season. Once again, Into the AM, click that link down below, see what they got for you and those gifties in your life. Big thanks to Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. All right, let's talk about some video games. This is going to be pretty rambly, just me sharing my candid thoughts kind of off the top of my head. I have a list written down here, but I don't have any talking points prepared, so I hope you're up for a soft-spoken ramble, because that's what you're getting. I have my coffee here in my very large mug, and so it's gonna be chill. We're just gonna sip some coffee, talk about video games, and you might, well, I was gonna say you might be surprised by some of these, maybe, but I don't actually know what my number one game on this list is going to be yet. I have it written down a certain way here, but I'm already having second thoughts about whether that is going to be my number one. We will see when we get to the bottom of the list. I will make that decision in real time. But let's start at the top. Let's start at number 10. My number 10 game announcement from the Game Awards 2025 is called Warlock, which is a Dungeons and Dragons game, a D&D game being developed by Invoke Studios, whom I've never heard of before, and of course Wizards of the Coast. And this looks to be like a third-person action RPG, like single player kind of thing. We didn't actually get to see any gameplay whatsoever. It was a purely cinematic trailer, just kind of a tone piece to introduce the idea. And at the end of it, we got to see that we will have a gameplay reveal in the summer of 2026. And then the game will release in 2027. So we're talking about something that's quite a ways out yet, which actually goes for a lot of the games on this list. None of them, now that I'm looking at them, I don't think any of them have a solid release date. There's a few 2026s, a lot of 2027, and then some that are purely TBA. So these games are still quite a ways out, but anyway. Warlock, I have to say what captured my attention the most about this trailer was the use of Tools 46 and 2, which is a banger of a song. And I think it's an awesome song for a game trailer. Although I have to say the edit was slightly awkward. I don't know. I feel like it could have been slightly better. But anyway, it did catch my attention. I think it made for a pretty badass trailer. And I guess that's why they pay the big bucks to license these songs for these things. So fools like me get excited when you put music I like in a trailer. But I'm a big D&D fan. And I think Warlock has the potential to be really neat. Potentially a very kind of dark spell casting, summoning, third-person action RPG thing. But But yeah, we really don't know anything about it yet because they didn't show any gameplay. So I just like the aesthetics. I thought it looked and sounded cool. So that's something I will be keeping my eye on. That, as I said, has been announced for 2027. And for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC, pardon me. So yeah, I don't know. We don't really know much more about it, but we will see. We will see. It was enough. It caught my attention enough to make number 10 on this list. Number 9 is one that had been announced before, if I'm not mistaken, but we got to see more of it. And it's looking really good. I'm pretty excited about it. It's called Exodus. And the most exciting thing about this for me is that it's really carrying the torch from a lot of classic BioWare games. It's being developed by Archetype Entertainment, which is made up of a bunch of ex-BioWare veterans, people who worked on Mass Effect, people who worked on Baldur's Gate, people who worked on KOTOR, which is an interesting point because you will see later in this list we will talk about some ex-BioWare folks a bit more. But it's been a while since we've had a really good space opera kind of game that really is a spiritual successor to the Mass Effect games, that hits that particular kind of action RPG that BioWare was making at their peak, And Exodus looks like it could be just that. It looks like a story-driven, single-player action RPG space epic. Now, the story that they showed some of in this trailer, it's hard to say. There's some kind of world-ending calamity, and you are the chosen one. You play as, I don't know, some guy with a very generic sci-fi name. It's like, you're special. You gotta save the world or whatever. You have special powers. That could be good or bad depending on how they play it, right? On the surface, that sounds very, very tropey and very, very well-worn territory. But in practice, if they, have some self-awareness about that, and they're willing to, sort of subvert expectations a bit, maybe, that could be really interesting. Or even if not, you know what? I'm up for just a chosen one hero story, well told. I can always get behind that as well. So, anyway, there's Exodus. Is looking like a bit of a banger. We will see, of course, but there's actually a few different awesome-looking sci-fi properties on this list. So I feel like the next year or two are going to be good for sci-fi RPGs. That is announced for early 2027, for what it's worth, for PC, a PS5, and the Xboxes. Number 8 on my list was a game that I believe was announced at the Game Awards and is very different from either of these two. It is called The Free Shepherd. The Free Shepherd. And this is a really charming and interesting looking game. Basically, you play a border collie and you are herding sheep in these beautiful pastoral landscapes. But there's also something weird going on. There's a strange sci-fi thing happening with these big monoliths on the landscape. And the game's marketing material makes reference to some kind of cataclysm that is approaching. And you, as the border collie, are the only one that can stop it somehow. I don't quite understand how that works. You gotta herd the sheep into the right places to solve the puzzles. I'm not quite sure. But it looks adorable because border collies are objectively some of the cutest dogs. I'm a little biased. I grew up with a border collie next door and we played together all the time. She was very cute. But it's also beautiful aesthetically. It has this very bloomy, almost kind of watercolory look to it. The landscapes are pretty open and kind of barren looking in a sense, like sort of the Scottish Highlands or something. Or honestly, they made me think a little bit of like the Faroe Islands or something like that. But anyway, very, very pretty looking. And there's this interesting mystery that's been teased at the core of it. So give me cute animals, give me awesome sci-fi, beautiful graphics, and I am in. Makes me think of Stray a little bit. Not thematically different, but similar in that you're an animal in a sort of some kind of post-apocalyptic or cataclysmic world, and you are somehow solving the world's problems just by being an animal and being kind of cute and doing what you do. So anyway, that is being developed by Frame Interactive, whom I believe has put out one game before. I think they're a pretty small indie studio. They put out a game called Headmaster, which I had heard of, though I've not played. It is a VR game where you head soccer balls, like you hit soccer balls with your head. It's a fine use of VR. Apparently it was fairly well received, but this looks like a significant departure from what they have done previously. It's been announced for PC and PS5. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it on Xbox as well. Interestingly, the trailer says at the end of it, coming soon, but the Steam page says 2027, which, I mean, granted, we are almost in 2026, but 2027, I would not call that soon. Anyway, we'll see. But I'll certainly be keeping my eye on the Free Shepherd. Number 7 is a game I did not expect to be intrigued by just based on the name alone, but do not judge a book by its cover. This game is called Bradley the Badger. Bradley the Badger. This game actually got a fair bit of buzz coming out of the Game Awards because it's an interesting concept. It's a pretty darn cool idea, actually. This game, okay, let's see if I can explain this. Based off what the trailer shows, you play as a platformer mascot in the style of like a Mario or like a Crash Bandicoot or why am I blanking on other like 90s platformer mascots? Gex, Croc. Why can't I think of other major ones? Ratchet and Clank, I guess. Anyway, whatever. Like a Bubsy. A 90s platformer mascot, and that has been your bread and butter. And one day you're ready to take on a new adventure, and you walk out of your home, and the whole world has gone crazy. And Bradley the Badger finds himself in game worlds reminiscent of sort of like AAA modern games, like obviously inspired by Dark Souls, inspired by Cyberpunk, those sorts of settings. There's some other ones in the trailer as well. But all these worlds are like half finished. It's like they were in development but never finished. And so you're platforming around these environments and you're like manipulating the unfinished assets to get around. It's very like meta and very like fourth wall breaky, because at some point, as revealed by the trailer, Bradley escapes the game and encounters presumably his developer, who looks like they're struggling, like there's a problem there. There's been an issue. And maybe that's why all these game assets are getting mixed up with Bradley's game. And anyway, it's unclear exactly what the nature of that is, but it seems very ambitious. The premise of a 90s mascot platformer getting mixed up into all kinds of other modern AAA game settings is fun to start with. And then also this like fourth wall breaking meta level where they're all unfinished, and like this guy's interacting with his own developers. Kind of interesting. It could be really cool. It could also be insufferable, but it could also be really cool. Some interesting pedigree behind this game. It's being developed by a studio called Day for Night, which is headed up by, I believe, a former lead designer on Red Dead Redemption and the creative director on Mario and Rabbids. So there's some very interesting pedigree there. Some fun ideas clearly at play. And we will see if Bradley the Badger can make that lofty, ambitious concept work. That's been announced for PC, presumably consoles to be announced, and no date on that one, so we have no idea when that's arriving. But worth keeping an eye on for sure. All right. Coming up next, we have one that really caught me by surprise, called Coven of the Chicken Foot. Weird name, and a weird looking game, to be fair. This is being developed by an indie studio called Wildflower Games. I think this might be their first game. And it looks to be an adventure game where you play as an old witch, like a Baba Yaga type woman. And she has chicken feet for some reason. I guess we'll find out. But she has to partner with a very strange beast in order to solve puzzles and traverse the world to do something. It's unclear what exactly, but the marketing material talks about, like, after the battles have been fought and the dungeons have been plundered, this character, this Baba Yaga type grandmother witch, has to get to work and do something to fulfill her pact with the Coven. Again, unclear what. But what really struck me about this game was the visual style. It is gorgeous. It has this incredible hand-drawn style that might be one of the best implementations of that sort of style I've ever seen. It's very dramatic, lots of use of like light and dark, and then of course there's this interesting looking relationship between the witch and the beast, which some people have said is very reminiscent of like The Last Guardian, some comments to that effect on the trailer. It looks like the main character is getting along well with this creature. But then at the very end, the creature looks like it attacks the woman maybe. So it's like clearly there's something going on there. It was a very atmospheric, a very intriguing, mysterious trailer with some beautiful art. And that was enough to earn a place at number 6 on my list. And that is Coven of the Chicken Foot, announced for PC, consoles, TBA, and no release date on that yet. Okay, number 5. This is one that, honestly, I wasn't super excited about when I saw the name, necessarily. When I saw that it had been announced, because I didn't actually, full disclosure, I didn't actually watch the Game Awards in their entirety live. I watched a recap, and then I read a recap really, and I watched a bunch of trailers from that recap. So I saw the headline that this game had been announced before I actually saw the trailer. This is Control Resonant. Control Resonant, which for all intents and purposes is basically Control 2. Sort of. Control, of course, from Remedy, is a third-person action game, action adventure, I guess. There's some shooting. There's some. Anyway, if you've played Control, you know what it is. But it's like SCP, the game, right? It's like you are part of the Bureau of Control, and There's this place where all these paranormal objects are stored, with various weird reality bending powers. It's a really cool setting. It's very intriguing setup with lots of potential. I never did finish playing Control. I played a chunk of it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I found the environments got maybe a little samey after a while, which is weird for a game with that premise. But I spent a lot of time in this warehouse, basically, for weird items, or complex, whatever you want to call it, facility. But anyway, Control Resonant. This trailer is wild. This trailer is so off the hook. This trailer is unhinged. You should probably watch this trailer if you haven't seen it yet. It was very hard to watch in some ways because it was so all over the place. But clearly reality is breaking, and you play as the sibling of the main character from the first Control. And this game looks to be much more of a third-person character action RPG. They show the main character wielding melee weapons of various kinds, with some action reminiscent of like a Devil May Cry almost, like air juggling enemies and stuff. In this very weird and totally messed up version of New York, I think it is, Manhattan, where reality is breaking, basically, and you gotta fix it. Again, the premise on its own sounds kind of whatever, but the presentation is spectacular. You really owe it to yourself to watch this trailer and listen to it as well. The sound design of this trailer was something else. Extremely trippy, super, super weird looking. I think this is going to be a mind-bending kind of setting. I think if I had one of my criticisms, I guess, of the original Control was that the combat was fine, but it was not my favorite part of that game. I think the setting and the premise was my favorite part of that game, and the atmosphere. But the combat looks like it's definitely kicking it up a notch in this next one. So, Control Resonant announced for 2026, coming out on PC, PS5, and the Xboxes from Remedy. And of course, it's on their Northlight engine, which is a very technically accomplished engine, and it looks spectacular. This looks like an incredible application of that engine. All right, number 4 on my list was a big surprise, totally out of left field. I don't think anyone saw this coming. Star Wars Galactic Racer. Star Wars Galactic Racer. I saw this and I was like, are you serious? They just announced a new pod racer game in 2025. What is going on? And kind of, sort of, to be fair, they didn't actually show any pod racers in the trailer, but it is strongly hinted at the end of the trailer that there will be pod racers in this game. So what is this game? It is just a racing game set in the Star Wars universe. And it looks like a spiritual successor to past such games, which we've not had for a very long time. But the old fogies amongst you might remember Star Wars Episode 1 Racer from the late 90s, I think 99. Which I played the crap out of back in the day. That was a game that I played a lot of on N64 with a good friend of mine, and then later on PC once I got it myself. And that game is super fun. It has an incredible sense of speed. It holds up to this day. Like, the tracks are maybe a little simple, but the actual racing, I would say, stands up to this day. And what they showed of Star Wars Galactic Racer looks like it is kind of taking on that tradition. The tracks look to be, large, sort of sprawling tracks across familiar and new Star Wars locales, with sort of like multiple paths and very dynamic, so that hopefully each race is a little bit different. Unlike Episode 1 Racer, which was just pod racers, Galactic Racer brings in a whole bunch of new vehicle types. So I've got like land speeders and speeder bikes and other kinds of hover vehicles, I guess, in the Star Wars setting. And then at the very end, they do tease pod racers with Sebulba showing up at the end. You can hear his pod racer just at the very end. So I'm sure we'll get pod racers in there. This just looks like a good time. And I've always said that they needed to put out another Star Wars racer game. I don't know how many people are clamoring for such a thing, but for me, it was something I was like, I would love a remastered pod racer, but this is even better, I would say. And I guess they decided that there's enough people that want a new Star Wars racer game in 2026. So this has been announced for release in 2026. It is being developed by Fuse Games. I think this is their first game, but they are made up of some folks from Criterion, some ex-Criterion employees. And Criterion had control of the Need for Speed franchise for some time there, about a decade plus ago, before they sort of transitioned into Ghost Games, and the Ghost Games sort of took over. But Criterion, of course, also known for the Burnout games. And so it was granted a long time ago. But I guess what I'm saying is they have some strong racing game chops. And it'll be really interesting to see if they can bring those to bear on Galactic Racer. Everything they showed looks like a balls to the wall, high octane kind of racing game set in the Star Wars universe. There's some story stuff about like the Empire has fallen, so I guess it's set in like post Return of the Jedi era, and these crime syndicates are trying to get the racing circuit back up and running. And I don't know, there's some character who wants to like has some kind of philosophical manifesto about the need for racing, or I don't know, whatever. I'm sure it's silly. The story's probably not that important, but the action, the racing looks pretty good, so we shall see. That's coming out 2026, and I'm very keen to play that. Okay, we're into the top 3 here now, fam. Yeah, I think I've decided how I'm ordering these. I think I have. In at number 3, this is probably going to be many people's number 1, but number 3 for me, we have Divinity. Wow, what a trailer. This is the next game from Larian. Larian, of course, of Baldur's Gate 3, most recently. Coming off of those accolades, that massive success. Prior to that, they were a much more niche studio, but with, a strong portfolio with Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, which were very good RPGs, although I never played 2, I only played 1, but by all accounts, 2 was very good. And then, of course, before that, going all the way back to the original Divine Divinity, which was a very weird but interesting action RPG back in the early 2000s. So I've played a few of their games over the years, including Divine Divinity, Divinity Ego Draconis, which was a kind of a weird one where you flew on dragons, or you flew as dragons. I can't even remember. It was a while ago. Anyway, point being, Larian coming out with a new game in their Divinity series. I'm not sure if this is carrying on from existing story in the Divinity universe, or if it's a prequel, or if it's a reboot. Unclear. The point is that trailer was unhinged. That trailer was. The trailer was a lot. It was also. I'm just gonna say, if you haven't seen it, just go watch the trailer. It's like a medieval setting. There's kind of a Wicker Man setup going on. It gets very dark. It's quite graphic. So if that's not your thing, maybe don't watch it. But I guess it was family friendly enough to show on the Game Awards. So take that as you will. But it's pretty wild. This was, of course, what was being teased by that statue in the desert that everyone was losing their minds about over the past few weeks. There's this big marketing tease from Jeff Keighley and friends. They found this statue out in the desert near Joshua Tree National Park. It is like a portal of some kind. Anyway, we find out in the trailer that this game is what that statue was teasing. And there was some suggestion early on that maybe it was related to an Elder Scrolls game. I never really thought it looked like that. And indeed, it is not. We talked about it a bit on one of my streams, but it was leaked ahead of time, or ahead of the Game Awards, that that statue was related to a trademark for Divinity. And so everyone kind of knew that Larian had something up their sleeve. And boy, did they ever. We got to see no gameplay. We don't get to know anything else about it. We just know Larian's working on a new game. It's going to be an RPG. It's going to be bigger than Baldur's Gate 3. It is their next big thing. And it looks like it's going to be kind of crazy. That was given no platforms and no release date, but one can presume it's coming to PC, probably PS5, and probably eventually the Xboxes. And I would be very surprised if we saw it before 2027, but we don't really know. So, but anyway, it made a hell of a splash at the Game Awards. And of course, with hot off the success of Baldur's Gate 3, the expectations are very high for this game. And, that's always a double-edged blade. We will see if Larian is able to meet or surpass those lofty expectations. But, they have a very obvious, genuine love for the games they make. They are returning to a universe that is theirs exclusively, which I'm sure that they're very happy about. And I expect Divinity is going to be a banger when it eventually drops. I think this will be one of those disruptive games, that everybody loses their minds over. But we'll see. Okay, coming in at number 2. This was almost my number 1, but I think I've decided to reshuffle it. Total War Warhammer 40K. It happened. They did it. Creative Assembly broke the emergency glass, and they pulled out Total War Warhammer 40K. I think everybody has known that this game would happen eventually. Creative Assembly, the developers of the Total War series, have of course had massive success with not 1, not 2, but 3 different Warhammer fantasy games so far. And that shows no signs of stopping. Those games are very well made, very well received. And it was only natural eventually that they would do 40K. And boy howdy, are they doing 40K. I wasn't quite sure how, it started off with a cinematic trailer, which was badass. It reminded me in the best way of cinematic trailers for 40K games of yesteryear, such as the original Dawn of War. It was very flashy, very badass, and all that. But perhaps even more interestingly, at the end of the trailer, they showed some gameplay. And I wasn't quite sure how the Dawn of War formula, pardon me, the Total War formula was going to translate into 40K settings. But it looks like it's going to work well. The scale, of course, is huge. And that goes so well with 40K. They showed some urban environments just absolutely flooded with Space Marines and orcs fighting one another. And in the trailer, I think we saw Space Marines, we saw orcs, I think we saw guardsmen. I don't think we saw anything else. No Chaos, no Eldar, no Nids, nothing, no Necrons. But it's a safe bet we will get all that and more over years. Because, of course, as great as these games are, they are notorious for having tremendous amounts of DLC. I saw a comment under the trailer that was like 40K is the number of DLCs this game will have. And I was like, yeah, okay. That's fair. That's fair criticism. Creative Assembly and Sega do love their DLCs for these games. And I'm sure we will have many dropping different races and whatnot after launch. But hopefully at launch this game feels complete, fleshed out. The other cool thing they showed was that the strategic level map is going to be interplanetary, right? So it's kind of like a galaxy map kind of look to it, which again is reminiscent of some. Well, actually, is it? Thinking back to the original Dawn of War, I remember they had territory control map kind of situation. Don't know if they ever had interplanetary stuff. I feel like they did, but now I'm second guessing myself. Anyway, it looks rad though. It's been announced for PC. That's probably where it will stay. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. The spectacle alone is worth it, I think. They had some super badass moments, like a crazy orbital bombardment moment and that sort of thing. So, release date TBA. We don't know yet when that's going to drop. But 2027 seems like a safe bet. And finally, my number one game on this list is the one that has been conspicuously absent up till this point. It was one of the biggest announcements of the Game Awards, of course. And you probably already know what it is. Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic. This is a spiritual successor to the Knights of the Old Republic games. And it is being headed up by none other than Casey Hudson, who is a ex-BioWare employee. He left BioWare back in 2020, but he was the director on the original Knights of the Old Republic and the Mass Effect games as well. He was involved in Neverwinter Nights and Baldur's Gate and Anthem and a bunch of other games at BioWare, but a lot of the success of what people consider BioWare's best games ever, I think, comes down to this guy. Well, I don't want to say a lot of the success, but anyway, he was a big part of that. Obviously, it was the work of many people. But the point is that if anybody can lead a KOTOR spiritual successor, it's Casey Hudson. And he founded his own studio. It's called Arcanaut Studios. And Arcanaut, in partnership with Lucasfilm Games, are developing a Star Wars FOTOR, Fate of the Old Republic FOTOR. Now, I must admit, I never played KOTOR 2. KOTOR 2 was developed by Obsidian, and it was considered a bit of a flawed masterpiece at its time. My understanding is that fan patches have since really made that game excellent, but I think a lot of people considered it a bit of a diamond in the rough at the time, which was par for the course for Obsidian at that time. Obsidian was picking up a lot of sequels to big name games around that era, and putting up very interesting sequels that often were a bit flawed in some ways, but are in retrospect considered all-time classics. I think that is the case with KOTOR 2. But nevertheless, KOTOR 1 was a watershed moment in Star Wars gaming. I will never forget that sense of adventure, that I experienced the first time, landing on Terrace and exploring around and building your team. And, of course, the story is second to none, in terms of sort of video game writing and stories. So, needless to say, FOTOR, Fate of the Old Republic, has a lot riding on it. The expectations are very high, but it has been a long time as well. And it's probably mostly people my age, millennials, that are very excited about this. I imagine younger gamers don't have a whole lot. Well, this is a generalization, but the series has been dormant for a long time. We did, of course, get the Old Republic, the MMO, back in 2010 or something, which I think is still going, still running. But that was a different kind of thing, It was some good stories to be had, but a different format of game. So this is a return to form in that it is a single-player, story-focused action RPG, which, based on the trailer, the bits that they tease in there, looks like it will be a continuation of the KOTOR stories, which is partly why I would really like to go back and play KOTOR 2, maybe even replay KOTOR 1. Now, of course, interestingly, there is a remake of KOTOR 1 that has been confirmed to be in development for a couple of years now, at least. It's had a very troubled development. It's got passed around to a couple different developers. At one point, it was looking like it might have been canceled there, but evidently not. Last we heard, the KOTOR remake is still a going concern, but conspicuously quiet. We have not seen anything of it, nor heard about it for quite some time, which is a little bit worrying. But more recently, there have been persistent rumors of a KOTOR 2 remake being developed by yet a different studio, which could work. You could see a situation where there's a lot of shared assets between KOTOR 1 and 2. So maybe if these development teams are developing a KOTOR 1 and 2 remake in tandem, they could share resources, share assets, and make sure that those games are like sort of stylistically, technologically aligned, which would be great. Can you imagine a situation where maybe we get a KOTOR 1 remake in 2026, a KOTOR 2 remake in 2027, and then FOTOR sometime after that? Maybe that's a little optimistic. There was a fair bit of discussion on social media going about how, Fate of the Old Republic is in early development. Like like it's only just started. And so I think it was Jason Schreier and Bloomberg saying, if that's the case, we probably won't see this game before 2030. And that got picked up by a lot of different news outlets, and they're all like, oh, FOTOR, not till 2030. But then Casey Hudson came out and said, look, I'm not getting any younger. This game's going to be out before 2030. Of course, that's always best of intentions. In actuality, games are complicated. Game development is hard. Sometimes things take a lot longer than they expect or than anyone expects. So it could be that we don't see FOTOR for a very long time. But according to the game director, they're aiming for release before 2030. So 2029, holiday season 2029. But if that's the case, actually that does give the KOTOR remakes a bit more time to breathe. If they wanted to have, kind of annual releases leading up to FOTOR, maybe we could see a 27, 28, 29 release for Remake 1, 2, and then FOTOR. I don't know. I'd be okay with it. And I would love to play like modern, polished up, respectful remakes of those games. I think that would be awesome. Especially because I think, like I said, KOTOR 2 is often considered a diamond in the rough, and I bet you a good remake could really bring that to a whole new audience. Even folks like myself who were around at the time and they just never played it. So that is my number one game. A good Star Wars RPG will always excite me. As an intersection of a couple things I love very much, led by someone who's made some all-time classic games. So, high expectations. I hope it's good. And of course, no gameplay shown there. No release date, of course. And we know it's coming to PC, but beyond that, who knows? So, I'm sure it'll come to all the major consoles. By the time it comes out, we'll probably be talking PlayStation 6 and whatever the next Xbox will be. So that one's a long way out. But, and of course, we really hope it doesn't suffer the fate of lots of other Star Wars projects, which is getting canceled. It tends to be more on the movie side of things, but infamously with some games as well, like 1313, anyone? Star Wars Eclipse, which is MIA and has been for a very long time. There's a precedent there. So I really hope that's not what happens here. I want to say this game is big enough and anticipated enough that it will come out one way or another. And that's it, friends. That's my top 10 games from the Game Awards 2025. Mostly fresh announcements. Like one, I guess, that's not in there, but largely fresh announcements. I've heard some people saying that the Game Awards this year were a little disappointing in terms of announcements. I think there were some real bangers. I think some fantastic looking games. The production quality on those trailers just keeps going up and up. They're all super hype. I think they all showed really, really well. Except for maybe 007 First Light with the Lenny Kravitz cameo. That was kind of weird. But, I think overall they were really well presented and some super compelling announcements there. What I will say is maybe a little disappointing is how far out all these games are. Like a few 2026s, lots of 2027s, lots of TBAs beyond that. So it could be years and years and years before we see all of these games come to fruition, which is always a little disappointing, especially in a time of such uncertainty for video game hardware, in a time of general turmoil for the video games industry. Lots of layoffs over the last few years, major contraction at big studios. Part of that's the post-COVID situation, but there's a lot of consolidation going on in the video games industry. So, a lot of cuts due to those consolidations and like labor issues have never been more relevant in the video games industry, with some studios unionizing and other ones union busting potentially, like Rockstar. It's tumultuous times in the video game industry, and of course the hardware side of things with RAM prices and SSD prices, but specifically RAM going through the roof, in the context of like AI boom and data centers. And anyway, whatever. I could talk a lot about the current state of the industry and where it might be headed, and the uncertainty inherent in all that. But I think the take home here is that there's still some really talented people out there making some spectacular looking games. I sincerely hope we get to see all these games on this list come to fruition, and I hope they're all good. I always hope games are good. That's what we want. We all want good games. Developers want to put out a good game. Players want to play a good game. So let's hope that's what we have here, even if we have to wait a few years for some of them. I don't know about you, but my backlog is insurmountable. My unplayed game pile of shame in my Steam library will never be, fully dealt with. Like, I have games to play forever, literally. So I don't mind waiting a few years for some of these to cook. And that brings me to the end of the video. Friends, I would love to hear from you what games you are most excited for from the Game Awards 2025. What announcements got you going? And which ones do you think maybe didn't quite hit the mark? Is there anything you saw that was like, I don't know? Also about the winners. We didn't talk here today at all about the winners. Obviously, Expedition 33 was a big one. I have not played Expedition 33. It is on my list of to plays. Maybe I should play it sooner rather than later. I hear nothing but praise for that game. It is in a genre that I do enjoy. Let me know down in the comments if you would like to see me play some E33, whether on the channel or on live on stream. I'd be happy to check it out if you guys are clamoring for that. So anyhow, friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this very rambly look at some of the most exciting games for me that came out of this year's Game Awards. And like I said, I'd love to hear from you down below in the comments. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having you back here next time. Farewell for now, my friends. And of course, before we wrap up the video, I have to give thanks to this channel's amazing supporters, whose names you see right here. These fantastic folks support what I do here through my YouTube memberships and through Patreon, and I appreciate them so very, very much. Their support allows me to keep making the kinds of videos that I enjoy making the most, and that you hopefully enjoy watching and listening to the most as well. There are a few different tiers which people can support at, and if you happen to be interested in doing so and signing up, you can find links down below in the video description. One of those tiers, however, gets a very special spoken shout out in every single video, and you probably already recognize these legendary names that I'm about to read to you right now, because I give them thanks in every video, starting with drummer Brit, Jake Alufney, throwing me for a loop. Joe has added TCL to the end of his name, so Joe TCL, and Ragnar Ragnarsson. Once again, a big thank you to our incredible Fusroda supporters, and in fact, all of this channel's supporters. I appreciate them so very much. Thanks again, supporters. Oh, wait. I almost forgot. We have 5 new supporters over on the YouTube, and as is tradition, we got to give them thanks for joining up as well. Big shout out to Tom, Sartos, Tranced, Ryazan, and Frankie. Welcome to the supporter squad all. Thanks again, supporters.